Those watching you right now, those who would watch you later, and advice to them, should they join politics or bureaucracy?
2004, when I became MP for the first time, I was the youngest member of parliament at 26. There's no perfect formula for a democracy. So England is itself struggling. The UK is struggling about this first past the post, right? Because Labour would not have got 400 seats if it wasn't first past the post. So there are pros and cons to it, but I think what system we have today is working pretty much okay. Small tinkering reforms can happen, but largely my only point going back to it is that India is a very different country. Indian democracy is so deep-rooted. There's so many emotional quotients to it that to have a cutoff rate, 78 ho jao, then you have to retire. I don't think that will work quite as well. I'm saying the other thing. You push enough young people from this side, automatically the space for the really, really old people will become less, and they'll realize that now we have to move on. And a lot of people say this.
Hello and welcome to Unacademy UPSC Summit 2024. Joining us today is a prominent opposition leader, former Deputy Chief Minister of the state of Rajasthan, former Union Minister, Mr. Sachin Pilot. Mr. Pilot, appreciate your joining us today. Let me ask you something, and you have to answer honestly. Did the 2024 Lok Sabha election results pleasantly surprise you?
I don't think I was surprised, but I was certainly happy that our efforts and our hard work was recognized and adequately so by the voters. So it wasn't an election that we won, but it certainly sent a very strong message to the people running the country and to the opposition. So it was a battle well fought, but it's many long days ahead.
Why I ask this question, you have been part of a coalition government at the center couple of times. Your party ran a majority government in the state of Rajasthan. How far do you agree when I say that coalition governments serve democracy better, enrich federalism, and respect the diversity that we have in India?
I think it's a fair point. We have seen coalition governments not last their full terms. There were 2 or 3 governments in the mid-90s which collapsed. And there were successful governments of the NDA and UPA which survived the full term. So it depends who's heading the coalition, and it depends on the constituents. If there is a basic minimum agenda that the government of the day needs to achieve, then parties come together. If there's so many pulls and pressures, then sometimes the weight is so much that they crumble. So it depends on the leadership who's leading the coalition, and it depends on the intent. If intent is to grab power and stay in power, then perhaps the people can see through it. But if you have a clear-cut roadmap and what to be achieved, then I think coalition governments are also can deliver. Having said that, when you have, like for the current government, for example, you have both participants of the NDA, which are basically the 2 crutches on which the current government is standing, is Mr. Naidu and Mr. Nitish Kumar. Now, both have had a very checkered history of being against the BJP, then with the BJP, then against. So we don't know what the future entails. But your question can go both ways. It can be a stable and an unstable government, depending on how the constituents react and behave and how the leadership takes its allies.
Can you confirm if your party is in touch with both the allies?
I think in politics, it's easy to assume that everybody is in touch with everybody else. But I think elections are over. The mandate is for the Congress party to be sitting in opposition. And we've accepted that mandate with all humility. But we will be a strong watchdog inside of Parliament and outside Parliament. Being the principal opposition party, it's our duty, our right, our obligation that we must act as a constructive opposition. But in politics, it's difficult to predict what might happen a few months down the line, a couple of years down the line. But for now, the initial sort of the election takeaway to my mind is not about who's in government. The fact is that opposition is 234 and the government is 290 something. So the gap is not that much between the ruling parties and the opposition. So it's a fairly balanced parliament. And I think we will not have a repeat of what we saw in the last 2 terms of parliament, where it was just bills were bulldozed through. There was not enough adequate discussion or debates and deliberations, which is really the hallmark of a republic and a democracy. The parliament is the most vibrant place where these debates should happen. And I think we'll see more of that. We'll certainly not allow the government to do what it wants whenever it wants. There will be a check and balance in Parliament.
I teach Indian polity for the civil services aspirants, and I tell them the very definition of a political party is a group of people coming together, contesting elections, forming the government. You were very close. Why did you not stake claim to form the government?
No, I think it is not about us trying to stake claim to form a government.
Clearly, a political party should not be happy staying in the opposition.
It's not about being happy. We fought with our backs to the wall, as you know. The institutions of the government of India, the brute force of the government of India was unleashed on almost all the opposition leaders. The Congress party's bank accounts were seized in the middle of elections. We had 2 chief ministers being put in jail. So there was a lot of misuse of agencies by the government of India. And our plank was about having an alternative roadmap. The Congress party, I think, led from the front when we brought together this India alliance. But the mandate was not for us to govern. And I think we have to respect that mandate. But the mandate was also for the BJP to realize that they lost almost 70 MPs in this new parliament. And the politics of trying to divide a certain section and gain political dividends, that politics, I think, was put a stop to. And they've asked them, in a way, the electorate of this country, that look within, do introspection, don't be arrogant, don't misuse your authority, and be accountable for what you are. Have a press conference, answer in parliament, take people along. Opposition is there to help you guide and navigate the best legislation that we can create. But it should be respected, recognized, and you have to work with the opposition. You have to have discussions in parliament. But we've seen previous 2 terms of the last government that there was scant regard for the opposition. This dismissive nature of, they mean nothing and they are nothing. That sort of, I think this election certainly dispelled those notions.
To build on that, elections are not only about choosing a government, they're also about choosing an opposition. And this time we can fairly say that people voted for a strong opposition. But how would you convince the audience listening to you today that you will play the role of a constructive, effective opposition?
Oh, I think we've already done that. Mr. Rahul Gandhi has accepted the Congress party's diktat of being the leader of opposition. And once you are in parliament, we only had 1 small session, but you can already see that the opposition will not just roll over and play dead. We are a very active, agile, responsible opposition. When things are important for the nation, we will support whatever needs to be done. At the same time, a check and balance is important. You've seen
just
earlier,
to interrupt you, do you want to play the role of what Mr. Late Arun Jaitley said, that parliamentary obstructionism is also our right? At that time, you would claim, let the parliament function, and now you're doing the same thing?
You see, running of the parliament is largely the business of the government, the treasury benches. They have the onus to run the parliament. So you have to take the views and the voice of the opposition on board. We are only asking for giving suggestions, asking for debates to happen. And if you want to discuss the situation in Manipur, for example, that has been simmering for so many months now, I think the voice of the last voter in India, who's in the fringes, whether it's the geographical fringe or the economic fringe, all those voices, those people, they are being represented by the opposition. So the Congress party, I won't speak for all opposition, but the Congress party most certainly, we will be very actively involved in checking when we feel that excess is being done. When you have decisions made without proper, process being adopted, where the deliberations are not happening, you get up in the morning and you have a note ban, you get up next morning and you announce something else. I think that procedural lapses, we'll certainly put a check to that. Opposition job really is to be able to give a balanced viewpoint on legislation business, on political activities, on appointments. And a lot of our constitutional bodies, which for 70 years through various governments have been nurtured, if the transparency, the authenticity, the functioning and the credibility of these organizations comes under a question mark, that's a huge problem for us. We think the independence and the transparency of these institutional bodies has to be maintained at all cost. And I think
so do you think this is an undeclared emergency, something we did not witness in 1975?
No, I think that some of the actions of the last government certainly lean towards having a one-man show where everything they want they could have done, and they just plowed through legislative business, suspending 147 members of parliament in a single day, and then barraging all the bills to go through parliament. That's not a healthy democracy. I mean, you have to have some semblance of regard for the opposition viewpoint. You may be less in numbers. I recall in 1984 elections, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi got 420 odd MPs, and there were 2 BJP MPs. But even then, the government of the day reached out to the opposition, took their views, solicited their ideas, and we are only talking for what we think is the best interest of the country. So take those views on board and then come up with the best possible options.
Sorry to put you in an uncomfortable position. The second largest party in 1984 was the TDP. Yet you denied TDP the post of the leader of the opposition. And then you claimed something similar happened to you in 2014 and 2019. How would you justify that?
It wasn't that. You see, when you have 420 MPs and you need 56 to be in opposition, TDP was 1/4 of those numbers.
We were about 2 seats.
Yes, we were 44 or 45. So it's not about denying something. You have to qualify for that. And by the way, mind I correct you, we didn't have a leader of opposition. There was leader of the party, but the BJP government did not give the LOP position to the Congress party.
No, so that's what I'm saying. They denied you the leader of opposition post in 2014 and 2019, and you claimed that the speaker should have recognized your leader as the leader of the opposition. Yet you denied the TDP the same position, same role in 1984.
Because if we add the opposition parties today, they are at 10x of what the opposition number was in 1984. You see my point I'm trying to make. Congress may have been 420 plus, and today BJP was 300. So that's 100
the kind
less.
of magnanimity shown by the Aam Aadmi Party in 2015 when they won 67 seats out of 70. Yet one of the 3 MLAs was given a post of the leader of the opposition in Delhi Legislative Assembly. Something you could also have done in 1984.
Perhaps,
but I will
if you want to go back 40 years, no, there are many certain instances I can cite to you where we have said what happened 50, 70, 60 years ago. If you want to keep citing those things, like for example, the emergency. Now the parliament, read out a statement about the emergency. It's 50 years ago. So much water has flown through the Ganges since then. But you want to make a political point by bringing up issues of the past. Very easy to do. We have to be positive and look forward and see what we can do moving ahead, as opposed to digging back 5 decades ago.
But the government may also have a fair claim that we don't want things to be under the oblivion. We want the repeat of that should not happen again. That's why they're keeping the pot boiling, for the lack of a better word.
You can say that, but your actions must also say that, right? Your actions of the last 10 years by using the agencies of the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI and the police. So 96% of all raids, all notices, all actions by the ED has been on opposition leaders. And the minute you jump ship and go from the opposition towards the ND or the BJP, all is forgiven. So all those actions are quite unilateral. They're unprecedented. And I think that's the reason why the electorate in this country have given a resounding message to the ruling dispensation that this cannot go on any further.
Mr. Pilot, according to you, what are the main challenges to India's democracy?
Well, we have plenty of challenges, but I think our country has matured very quickly. 70 years is not a long time. We have countries like the UK and the US where adult franchise wasn't universal for a very long time. So when our first election was held, we had 1 person, 1 vote, which at that time people thought India is a very poor, illiterate country. They can't handle democracy, etc. So we've come a long way.
The obituaries were written by the foreign press that this is an experiment.
Exactly, to prove them wrong time and again. I think our democracy is resilient. It's and I think the Indian electorate, the voters, are more wise than professors, politicians, media, and people who like you and I who came to not know all about politics. But the voters, I think, are second to none. They're brutal, and they think. I think the voters really know better than all of us. So we have to be at all times realistic about knowing that it is the voters that we work for. They give us orders to work for 5 years. So our democracy, I think, is quite healthy. It will carry on. Of course, we have challenges. We have issues which I think we must overcome in the next few decades about, papering over our fault lines. So many divisions are being created: religion, caste, creed, language. And I think a voter apathy is another one. We must try and get more people engaged in the election process. Young people need to feel that casting their vote is something that is not their duty, but it's the responsibility. Urban areas, I think, are not voting as much as they should. Younger people also, I think, need to get more motivated about electing the right person. And there's much more we can do, but I'm quite proud of what we've done in the last 70 years.
Do you think the challenge could also be the electoral finance, the funding of political parties? The electoral bonds have now been declared unconstitutional. What is the other alternative to fund political parties?
There are many ways to do it, but I think the Honorable Supreme Court is justified because the electoral bond business was a complete scam. And so we have to find a better way to finance our elections. more transparency in funding of the political parties. And also, I think we have to be more practical. Today, the world has moved on. When we first started out 70 years ago, today the electioneering, the campaigning, the issues, the communication, the interface has all changed. So we have to adapt to the times. But I think election reforms are important, not just by issuing orders and regulations, but in how do you follow them in spirit and how everybody can do it. It's not about you should do it or I should do it. It has to be done collectively. So the political system in this country has to work in unison. That will only happen if the government and the opposition want to do it together. And I think the lead on that must come from the government.
The number of bills being referred to the select committees, there is no public opinion sought on important bills. Last minute changes to the finance bill. Then you're using the money bill route to make important changes to the tribunals. The alleged misuse of the money bill. How would you react to all these changes?
Okay, so I think the standing committees and the bills being referred to them is not a bad thing. I think a rethink of some contentious issues is important. Can we have a more robust debate amongst the citizens about some of the laws that are being passed? It's a great idea, but the mechanics of it are difficult to follow because it's such a large country. We have concurrent lists where there's some issues that go to the state and to the center. But I think more openness in the way we form the bills. Right now, it's a few bureaucrats sit down and pen the bill. The stakeholdership should come at the genesis of it. When the ideation comes for a bill to be made, that's the time we must incorporate civil society, NGOs, stakeholders into the formative stages. Because then, if you have the thoroughness in at that time, you will need less changes when the rules are made or when the bills are amended. I think we should do more of that. Unfortunately, we don't have that system as of now, but we should. I strongly believe that at the time of when the gestation period is there for us to form those bills, instead of making a very bureaucratic and a government-based system, we should have more openness. Unfortunately, most governments, when they make these bills and legislations, is very closed door and very few people have access to it.
There is a lot of talk on delegated legislation. So do you agree if I say that we are governed today by rules, regulations, notifications, and not by well-deliberative laws enacted by the parliament?
As you know, laws are made by the government and parliament, but the departments make the rules. And I think the devil is in the detail. It's the rules that really matter. But we don't have discussions. I mean, bills that are so important, that have huge ramifications, are passed through without discussion. There are some walkouts or a logjam, and then the speaker just passes the bills. So I think most MPs should also realize, and I think government's job really is to make sure that these bills are vetted. There is a proper discussion, not for scoring brownie points in public eye, but to really contribute to making a solid bill. And a lot of our MPs are very, very talented. We should give everybody a chance to be able to participate and give it their best thought. Ultimately, the platform there in Parliament is for that, is to get the best possible outcome after exchange of debate. Perhaps opposition can give some better ideas than a few bureaucrats in the government side. Our government may not have thought of some things, but you must have the humility to open up for discussion and accept some changes that are suggested by the government, by the opposition. So I think bills need a lot more thought, a lot more research, and a lot more reading up. Some of our MPs perhaps don't get the time to read the bills as thoroughly as they should, which again is a practice that it's not getting better with time, possibly.
But then there is anti-defection law. So a legislator does not have the freedom of speech and expression. You as the opposition leader, an MP, might agree with a bill proposed by the government, but you have no say. So do you think anti-defection law needs a rethink, or should it be repealed altogether?
That is why we have a party forum to come up with a view on how we should vote on a particular bill. The parliamentary party also discusses, talks about it, and the party ultimately decides what the view will be. While you're speaking in the assembly or in the parliament, we are within our rights to say whatever we want. But because we have this, the anti-defection law, where you have to vote with the party, so you can debate. Ultimately, even the party's view is formed with its members, right? It's not one person taking a call. So when in a democracy, it's not every time is not consensus. It may be majority. If the party in the majority feels a certain way, that somebody who may not agree with that line ultimately falls in line. But the views are put on table. So that's the beauty of a democracy, right? The numbers matter.
But Mr. Pilot, political parties contest elections to win them, deepening democracy. But the same political party, there is no inner party democracy within that political party, barring the left political parties or some time ago the BJP. Almost all other political parties are run
Why
like
did you
family
say some time
enterprises.
ago?
Not now anymore, because it's also like the Congress High Command culture.
No, I can tell you, in the Congress party, we had elections recently, and it was a contested election. There's more than one person running for the position. As you know, Mr. Kharge was elected, but Dr. Shashi Tharoor fought for the post of Congress president. In every state capital in this country, there was a ballot box kept. Delegates went and put their vote. They had to choose, and they chose. And majority of them voted for Mr. Kharge, and he became a president. So there's a
Was
process.
it because he was supported by the family?
Let me explain this to you. I can support you, but can you become something? You have to be someone to become something. So support kiska is not important. The process, and I think we're very fair. There was election commission within the party. There was a nomination. There was a withdrawal. There was a campaign that both candidates did across the country, and they were received in the party office. My own late father fought against Mr. Sitaram Kesri. Again, and Mr. Pawar also fought that election. It was a well-fought election. Mr. Kesri won that election, but he made a point that you can have an opinion, you can work together, you can be competitors and still work for the same objective. You tell me another political party where you have elections like that. In the BJP, I don't know who nominated Mr. Nadda to become president, who voted for him, and how he got elected, how he got the extension he's got again. So we don't know the processes. So, who's making who the president in that party? Congress, it's a historical party, 130 years old. Election has been held so many times. And when Mrs. Sonia Gandhi also got re-elected, it was by the party delegates saying that we want to have another term. Nobody filed the nomination to fight against her. But there were two people contested this time. And Mr. Kharge got the majority of the votes. So I think I'm happy to report that the Congress party has a very robust election process. Anybody could have filed nomination.
But forget about the Congress. The other political parties.
You don't talk about it because, no, let me explain myself. Mr. Digvijay Singh was also going to contest. They could have been a multi-cornered contest. I'm saying that we should cherish the fact that we have a national party where you actually have elections. So when you talk about inner party democracy, I think we have done a much better the job than any other political party in the country.
But for other political parties, what is your take? Shouldn't there be a discussion, debate, at least some norms to follow inner party democracy? Because after all, these political parties would deepen democracy.
It's not for me to comment, right? It's their parties. But I'm just saying that they filed reports to the election commission where they allegedly have elections, and whatever paperwork they do, I don't know. It's for them to decide. We may be foes or friends, but it's their domain. I don't want to comment those parties. I just say that a lot of discussions happen within our party. I can't comment on other parties, but you're right. Most political parties should actually encourage this sort of discussion and contesting elections at all posts, including the top posts.
You're from Rajasthan with a history of civil society activism. If not for Aruna Roy, Nikhil Dev, maybe we would not have seen the Right to Information Act in Rajasthan, which was then implemented throughout the country. What is your take on civil society activism? Because your party also faced the brunt of the activism of 2011.
See, in a democracy, it's not just your right to vote that makes a country truly democratic. It's institutions, it's a civil society and the media that really form a check and balance on how we function as a country. So in India, the civil society has a very strong foundation, which I might add is not true for our immediate neighborhood. Right? Why is Indian democracy being celebrated? Not because we have election and people win and lose. It's because the institutions that are above ideologies that can sustain long terms of people who don't agree with them. We have a very large civil society. We have NGOs, we have individuals and institutions that work in a bipartisan way. We have independent judiciary. So civil society has a very long history, even before independence in this country. I think we must cherish and nourish it. But we must also be clear that civil society does not have to have a political view. They work for the country, they work for the people. And whoever's in government should take the views on board. I feel nowadays, last few years, there's been an effort to somehow not acknowledge the presence and the ideas that come out from some of our civil society members, which again is unfortunate. There are all sorts of civil societies, but to encourage them to think and ponder and give us ideas and policy formulation, I think is a very good idea. It's something that we should encourage.
What would you say about the Election Commission of India? Do you pat on their back for conducting the biggest extravaganza of democracy in India? Or do you think there was something amiss?
So when we had paper ballots, we used to have elections in 4 phases. Now we have electronic voting machines, which take an instant to cast. Now we have 7 phases. So it's counterintuitive to me how paper ballots were managed much more efficiently in 4 or 5 phases. Now we have 7 phases of elections. Of course, there'll be criticism. I just feel that the Election Commission of India owes it to our country. If anyone has a question or a doubt or a clarification is sought, they must come forward and comply with that. And even if one person has a doubt on any of the functioning of the EC, they must come forward and clarify it, because that's the bedrock of our faith in the system. If the EC's actions or something they say and do doesn't match up, then it causes concern in some people's minds, and that's not healthy. So Election Commission, I think, has done its job, but there are many. I mean, they have to be bipartisan, and they have to be seen to be bipartisan. So when we have a complaint against somebody and the BJP has a complaint, we know which way it's headed, sadly. But I hope that won't be the case moving ahead.
For common people like us, we don't know the inside details of what is happening. Why do you think that Election Commission is biased?
Well, I'm not
There's
making
no reason to. They enjoy a constitutional position. They have safeguards mentioned in the Constitution. Why would they act in a biased manner?
You're asking the wrong person. I have no answers for that. All I'm saying is that the Election Commission.
No, I'm asking you because you are part of the system. I'm not part of the.
I'm not part of the Election Commission. All I'm saying is that they have a huge responsibility, that they must not only be unbiased, but seen to be impartial, right? They must seen to be neutral and impartial and act on the basis of merit and the law of the land and the Constitution. But sometimes we've seen that there are challenges that we feel they're not handled as deftly or as neutrally as they should have been. I just hope that moving forward, we will not have that situation.
So do you want EVMs to be junked and we should go back to the paper ballots?
I feel people have different views on it. But if anybody has a doubt on it, I think...
No, what's your personal take on this?
There's no personal. I mean, I'm a member of the Congress party, and our party has very clearly said that verification is required, a transparent, that Form 17C, that must be made compulsory. If any individual has a problem with the way it's functioning, they must respond to that and not brush it aside and say, now Supreme Court has said that we won't talk about it, because it's a moving exercise, right? It's not something that's static. Machines are imported, bought, dejunked. So if the process is on, I think the Election Commission must clarify one or any doubt that anybody has. It could be civil society, it could be a political party, it could be a candidate. But if doubts come in people's mind, they must be clarified.
And there was a time when Election Commission organized a techathon. Please come and tell us, how can you hack the electronic voting machine? None of the opposition political parties
attempted not just hacking. I think you talk about hacking. No one ever said hacking. Management, malpractices, misuse. So many issues have come up, and they must be clarified to the satisfaction of the people who are complaining. By saying court ne boli sab theek hai, because it's not one election. There'll be next election, assembly election, or some other election. So it's a constant exercise. And I think it's their constitutional duty to make sure that no one has any doubts. And there are certain people who have doubts, and very strong doubts.
Judges, one from Bengal, resigned and contested elections, the one from Madhya Pradesh. Now, should there be a cloud on the judgments they have given? Or can we say that post-retirement benefit dictates your pre-retirement judgments?
It's a very technical question. I don't know. I think there should be, or there must be, a cooling off period for anybody holding an important position. I think there is a cooling off period. I don't know if it applies to the judges here, but it doesn't apply. It does make you think. If you join a political party a few days after you finish your important tenure as a member of the judiciary, it does make you think. I don't want to pose as questions. It's everyone's right to do whatever they want to do, but it makes you think. What could be the reasons for the last few?
But you can criticize judiciary on facts. That won't be contempt.
It's not about me. You see, it's not about one person. I don't want to make a sweeping statement against all judges. That's not true. That's not fair either. But there are some people who are more politically motivated than others. But to my mind, personally, I think someone holding an important job like that should have a longer cooling off period so people don't doubt their past judgments. And even if the judgments were rightly made, you're giving them reason to doubt them by doing this.
So cooling off period for judges, cooling off period for election commissioners.
I think so.
Cooling off period for party members to jump the ship, cross the floor.
I don't know if in any country we have that, but if you have a legislature, I mean, that's something internally parties perhaps could do. Like
not take the people
I
back.
was in Rajasthan, so when you take someone back in a party, you say, well, you work now for 3, 4, 5 years, and then when the time comes, then we'll consider you for giving a ticket to fight the next election. So that's an internal thing that the parties could do.
Mr. Pilot, you have been a deputy chief minister, a very important role. You have interacted with, and there are people who have been reporting to you as part of the bureaucracy. What are the ideal qualifications or personality traits that you find in some of the best and finest minds of bureaucrats that you work with?
I think Indian bureaucrats are second to none. The experience, expertise, and obviously the process by which they get to the positions is so stringent and so thorough that you end up getting the top minds of our country. So they're pretty good. I think most bureaucrats are quite honest and dedicated, and they have a lot of hard work because the number of people that we have in our services is far short than we should have had. Because it's a large country, so most of them are overworked, I have to say. But I think even in the state level, the bureaucracy is quite a dilemma.
Those watching you right now, those who would watch you later, an advice to them: should they join politics or bureaucracy?
It depends. Both are very, very important, and I think they complement each other. But politics is a far more sort of unsettling game. It's not a stable career path. It's something that if it motivates you, if one feels that's their calling, and you're able to rough it out, it has many peaks and valleys, ups and downs all the time. And sometimes there are circumstances that are beyond your control that will decide your future and destiny, and you have nothing to do with it. But if you're fully invested in it, I think more and more young people are anyway getting attracted to becoming leaders at all levels, whether it's a corporator or a sarpanch or a mayor or an MLA or MP. And
why is the entry to politics so difficult? It's like circulation of elites.
As difficult as it was. No, I mean, I think in last 20 years, I myself have seen that change. When I go to smaller towns in India, many young people have broken those class ceilings and entered public life. Young people, 24, 25, 26, become mayors.
But that is an exception, not the norm.
No.
It's still a very difficult place to get into.
I think that's something that it's a misnomer that some people are propagating, because if you go to the villages, the number of sarpanches I see in Rajasthan, below 30, below 25, it's maybe even 40% of all elected sarpanches, pradhans, and members of the system are below 30, 40, 50 years of age. So young people are coming in. It's not that they're not. And there are multiple levels of entry. So while it's true that to become member of parliament, for example, or MLA, it's a little bit more difficult because it's a much larger election. But it's not easy in any country, first of all. And India is more competitive because you have many competing interests, many competing people, many political parties to find your foothold and then to be able to fight and succeed. It's challenging. It's never easy. And nothing is easy. You have to work hard and stay the course.
How do we strengthen the grassroots democracy you were referring to, the Panchayati Raj, the urban local bodies?
I think they are quite strong, but what I think could be done further is that the Panchayati Raj system in India is something that took a lot of time to evolve, and now it's come to fruition. But the economic independence that the people should have, that doesn't exist as it should. Even mayors in this country, they're figureheads. They don't have financial autonomy to do things and make decisions. So there are multiple layers of governance that impedes the true spirit with which the Panchayati Raj was envisaged. But it has contributed a lot. Now the decision about nal kahan lagega, sadak kahan banegi, school kahan banega, that won't happen in Jaipur or Delhi. That happens at the panchayat level. There's a meeting. So there's a lot more openness, a lot more breakdown of the decision making at the grassroots level. So that's a healthy thing. But still, the sanctions, approvals, they take time. So I think more economic independence and more accountability to the PRI. Panchayati Raj institutions may people who get elected, I don't think they're as accountable as they should be, because every second term seats gets reserved, so they can't fight the next election. So they don't have to be accountable to the people. So more accountability. And I think they're also in the Panchayati Raj institutions that I know of in Rajasthan, there is no anti-defection law. So you get elected on one symbol, next morning you can go join the other party and make someone else win. So that's something we should, I think, take cognizance of.
Coming to that, you were also affected by the delimitation exercise, which was conducted in 2008. You had to shift your constituency, yet you got elected. So you have people's support. But apologies for me asking this question. Dynastic politics and democracy, how would you look at it?
So in a democracy, if you have a family that is involved in public service, for example, and one is keen to do it, you can't do it because you want to do it. You have to pass through the test. You have to go to the people, have to get elected. Yes, you get that foot in the door, you get the recognition, and perhaps people may give you a chance based on your family background. But I said it in the beginning of this program, I said the Indian voter is brutal. They don't care whose nephew, niece, uncle, grandfather you are. If you don't work for the people, you don't endear yourself in the hearts and minds of the voters, you won't get elected again. It's simple as that. And we've seen multiple examples of people who've kind of entered, made a mark, didn't sustain, didn't come up to mark of the voters, and people rejected them again. So I think as long as the collective wisdom of the voters is with the person contesting and winning elections, his or her last name, if not a qualification, cannot be a disqualification. Right. So if you can prove yourself, if you can work hard, and if you can come up on top, I think it's absolutely fine for someone to join politics. But that can't be the only reason, and it's not sustainable. Even if someone is pushed, like sometimes people are. If you don't enjoy it, your heart's not.
You're referring to?
No, I'm just saying anybody. So many people I know in various parts of the country where they'll want, I'm sure you want your kids to do well in life, and you think this is a good thing. It may not be a fit for them. So if your heart's not in it, and if you don't enjoy it, you want any profession. If you get up in the morning, I don't feel like I'm going to today give it my best, whether you're an artist or a journalist or a professor or a sports person or a media person or a politician. If your heart is not, if your skin's not in the game, and you don't feel the passion for it, you don't enjoy what you do, unlikely you'll succeed in it.
Mr. Pilot, I'll tell you, I was sad once in 2009. You were denied a cabinet post. You were a minister of state with independent charge. Why don't our politicians groom the young? If you were not made a cabinet minister then what was the ideal time otherwise?
What are you expecting of me? I was 26 years old when I became member of parliament. I was 31.
But you proved to be very effective as well. Minister
a lot of other people.
I think Companies Act 2013 was your brainchild.
Yes. And people still blame me for the law that I made as that minister. I made CSR compulsory in this country. And I got a lot of flack from a lot of corporate houses for that. But I did what I thought was good at that time. So I have actually been given many opportunities.
If you were good for Union Minister of State with independent charge, why deny a cabinet post? I mean, did you ask this question to yourself or to your Prime Minister? Why?
No. At that age, if I'm being given a chance to be a...
Come on, be honest.
I'm being honest. How many people at the age of 32 can become Minister of State independent charge in the government of India? It takes people 60 years to get into parliament. So, one has to also be realistic of, where we are and how we're functioning. That
didn't hurt you.
I was actually grateful that I was given a chance to prove myself as a minister. I did the best I could. I was telecom and IT, then I had corporate affairs. So in whatever field I was given a job, I did the best I can. And I can tell you, not very many people get as many chances as I did to perform and to get a platform at a very young age.
You've been a PCC president, a deputy chief minister. Now, where do you envisage a deeper role for Sachin Pilot, in Delhi or Rajasthan?
Can't say. Today I'm general secretary of the party. I'm in charge of state. Yes, and I'm a member of the working committee. So, and I'm an MLA from Rajasthan. So when I'm asked to campaign in any part of the country, I happily do it. I look after one state, but my home state, Rajasthan, obviously my focus is there also. But, it depends on the party. Kab kisko kahan kya kaam dena hai. It really depends on the time and the leadership what they want us to do. And
where's your heart? Your heart lies.
I mean, I get elected from Rajasthan. I've been there for all these years, more than 2 decades now. So that's obviously my top priority is to make sure my party gets stronger in Rajasthan. We're in opposition today. But who knows what the future holds? And, I worked both. I worked in Jaipur and Delhi, Parliament and Assembly, Union Minister, Deputy Chief Minister. So I've done a fair bit. But obviously, my priority will be to kind of make sure the Congress comes back to power in 2028.
Am I interacting with the future Chief Minister of the Rajasthan
That's
state?
4.5 years later. We don't know what you'll have for breakfast next
But
week.
you did spectacularly well because you were the PCC president when chips were down, and then because of how you galvanized your cadre, that's what led to Congress victory for 5.5 years ago.
No, I think it's obviously I was made president when we were down to 21 seats out of 200. It is our worst performance ever since independence. And then Mr. Modi just became prime minister. BJP had 165 out of 200 seats in Rajasthan. So you're right, chips were pretty down. And then not just I mean, I obviously I was the president, but I took everybody along together, worked 4 or 5 years, continuously. And voters are very smart. They don't see what you do in the last 6 months. They want to see when nothing is happening, what are you doing then? And there was the old saying that if you sweat in peacetime, you don't bleed in wartime. So when there are no elections, people don't expect you. That's time to reach out to the workers, be on the street, take up the right issues, and create that credibility of yourself and the party in people's minds. That's what really matters in the end. But yes, I did. I mean, we all worked hard. We formed a government, and unfortunately, we couldn't repeat ourselves in 23 December elections.
But you still did not do as bad as it was expected from you. But what you promised, Chief Minister's post?
No one promises anything. I was in fact, I made a promise. I said, I promise that I will work hard to make sure that we win Rajasthan and the Congress party can form a government. That was my promise. The party said, you must do what you can. And it did that. And there were certain differences that I and Mr. Govt had at that time, and you all know about that. But that's all water under the bridge. But today, we really tried hard. Like you said, we got 70 MLAs out of 200, which was not the case earlier times. We used to get 20, 50. So we were close. And I think if we had done a little bit more, perhaps we could have come back to power. But sadly, it didn't happen, and it doesn't matter. Winning and losing is part of life.
Have you forgiven him?
No question of asking and getting forgiven. What has gone is gone. Jo time nikal gaya won't come back. We have to just look ahead.
No, why I'm asking this is because it's important for country to know that your future is in safe hands with the young individuals. There has to be a retirement age for politicians, at least those who are in government. Do you agree?
No, aisa nahi hai. I think everyone is different. But I do believe that forget getting older people to retire. You just put in a lot of more young people, right? That takes up space. I have always fought for getting young people tickets to fight MLA elections and parliament elections, sometimes at my own peril. But still, I believe that when I was given chance at 26 to be MP, if I don't handhold a younger person, I'm doing a disservice to my own legacy. If I was there at that young age, if I don't show these young people my experiences, what I did right, what I learned, what I could do better, and if I don't handhold them and make them go forward in public life, then I'm not doing my job. So that's the thing. You must pass it on, right? So I try as hard as I can. And I did. A lot of people, when I was party president in Rajasthan, I just declared 40 under 40, that 40% of all tickets will go to people below age of 40. And not many people were quite happy about it, but I did it. So I always push younger people to contest elections, to fight. And I'm happy to tell you that Rajasthan Assembly today has a lot of Congress MLAs who are very young. I'm 27, 26. There's a member of parliament in Rajasthan. She's 26 years old. So a lot of young people, I think when they get support, the people and the voters give the political party the dividend. Young logo aap ticket doge, voters will reward you for that. So I think forget about retirement. Wo apne aap ho jata hai. When you have enough younger people in the pipeline, it just settles the score.
But you still didn't answer this point blank. Should there be a retirement age for not politicians in party, but at least in government?
I don't think there should be a cutoff age. I think it should be self-realized. And if your faculties aren't functioning as well as they should.
But you can't give up power, so it can't be self-realization.
But then you can't mandate also. It's a democracy. I'll tell you one example very quickly. 2004, when I became MP for the first time, I was the youngest member of parliament at 26. There was a gentleman from, I think, Karnataka. He was 94 years old. So there was a 70-year-old gap between me and that gentleman. And he came to take oath on a wheelchair. Now, people knew he's old, he's unwell, and he had a trip on his arm even into parliament. Despite that, they elected him. There must be some emotional bond that he must have had with the people of that area. So if they had other choices, they still elected him to Lok Sabha. It's not nominated. He won that election. So India is a different country. It's very emotive. So you can't disregard someone's long association. And people sometimes, there's one member of the Congress party, he was in hospital. He wrote a letter, I'm not able to campaign, Mr. Mirza in Rajasthan. He won the election from hospital bed. He's very old. So it's, you have to respect that sort of...
There have been politicians who have won elections from jails as well.
Fair enough. Then okay, so then you think that all those 2.5 million people in that whole area, all of them are to be blamed for making wrong choice.
Is it because of the flaw that we follow first past the post system? Should we switch to
Now you're getting the
proportional
fundamental
representation
stuff. Now
system?
there is no perfect, and you know this better than I. There is no perfect formula for a democracy. So England is itself is struggling. The UK is struggling about this first past the post, right? Because Labour would not have got 400 seats if it wasn't first past the post. So there are pros and cons to it, but I think what system we have today is working pretty much okay. Small tinkering reforms can happen, but largely my only point going back to it is that India is a very different country. Indian democracy is so deep rooted. There's so many emotional quotients to it that to have a cutoff, if you have 78 ho jao, then you have to retire. I don't think that will work quite as well. I'm saying the other thing. You push enough young people from this side, automatically the space for the really, really old people will become less, and they'll realize that now we have to move on. And a lot of people say this, कि youth का future है, नौजवानों का future है, but they say that for like 30 years and they keep saying it. So we have to also be pragmatic and realistic about what we say.
Why don't we witness such debates in the parliament? All we discuss is caste, religion. Parliament is supposed to be the forum for such intelligent debates.
We have good debates. I mean, I think it's wrong to say that we have no good debates. We have some very good parliamentarians, both on both sides of the aisle. But sometimes we also
Who's your favorite?
We also know, but we also focus on the guy who shouts the more, who is the biggest drama, who catches the most eyeballs, who gets the most traction on television. So you tell me how many people do you know that watch television debates on a very important bill discussed in Lok Sabha? But if you shout and scream and carry a placard and get photographed in the newspaper, then you're all over the press. So the media and, you and I, people like us also give more traction to individuals who create, a flashpoint as opposed to a healthy debate. But I think Indian Parliament has a lot of talent, but we have to give them time and space. And the mindset must be that let's have a longer discussion, have a more in-depth debate, and let's ask the best in the field to give input before we make laws.
Last two questions, Mr. Pilot. First, women reservation would be delayed because of delimitation, census. Should we talk about reservation or should we talk about more inclusiveness? Instead of reserving seats at the parliament or at the state legislature, shouldn't the political parties reserve tickets for women at the first place?
देखो हो नहीं रहा ना. That is a very wishful thinking, but unfortunately, last 70 years, we haven't seen enough of that. Why is there reservation? Because the normal processes are not pushing out that many women. If there were no reserved seats for Dalits, I'm sorry to say this, but how many of them would actually be in parliament? The reality of our society is different. That's why there's a form, and my party has been absolutely committed to having reservation for women because for 70 years, we're nowhere close to achieving the target that we set for ourselves. So parties can talk about it, but जब टिकट देने की बात आती है, winnability becomes a criteria. But if the seat is for women only, at least then you secure that many women MPs in parliament.
Sorry to say, you're contradicting yourself. First, you're saying that voter is very intelligent, brutal. And now are you saying, or if my assumption is right, the voter is sort of biased? That he would not vote for a Dalit?
Is our society not biased? Of course it's biased.
No, I want to know from you.
I'm telling you it's biased because we don't have everyone who's so forward-thinking, who's reformist, who's, who believes in equity and inclusion. There are all sorts of people in this country. That's why I'm saying that there are people who are tribals, Dalits, backwards, minorities, women don't get enough representation. So if we have, and every political party supports it. Tell me one party that says no for women's reservation, फिर भी हो नहीं रहा, 20 साल से नहीं हो रहा वो. Why is that? The intent is not. As today also they promised in 29. The government of the day said we'll do it, but we'll do it, God knows how many years later. उसका भी कोई guarantee नहीं है. So my party, 2005 onwards, we have said yes for it every time, but it hasn't come to fruition. But I believe that we have to stand up for people who have not, in the last 75 years, not gotten adequate representation.
Media. Blazing heat, hate. Should there be additional curbs on media, particularly the electronic media?
I think there are enough curbs as it is. If you look at the one of the reports I'm reading somewhere where the freedom of media index, India's fallen very sharply. So I think there are many invisible curbs as it is that we have in the media. But the media largely, I think in the last 5-7 decades, has played a very important role.
No, I'll rephrase my question. I'm not saying there should be additional curbs on free media. But media, you're aware, is alleged to be biased in favor of the ruling party. They would question the opposition and not the ruling party. But the kind of hate that blazes out of the 9 p.m. television studios, should there be curbs on that? Because ultimately you're polarizing the society, weakening democracy.
I don't think, I keep be honest with you, I don't think very many young people watch the 9 p.m. news anymore. A lot of people have just tuned out of it. And ultimately, it's market forces at play. A lot of people getting in content from YouTube and mobile phone. They don't have time to watch those 12 heads on the one TV screen talking at you. So that's, I think, anyway, losing flavor. But yes, I think people should realize that this sort of ancarious, vicious shouting match at 9 o'clock at night is not helping anyone. When you watch a TV news or debate, you must come out better informed than you were half an hour before the show started, right? That's the idea. But and I don't know why people are still carrying on with this shouting matches. It's not a good thing. People don't appreciate it. And I think the market for that is shrinking very rapidly.
One last question, sir. You have a Kashmir connection. Can we expect MP from the Congress party introduce a private member's bill to restore the statehood to Jammu and Kashmir?
I think the matter has already been settled in court in some sense because we have elections now, Supreme Court in Bola before September.
And but that would be for
government itself has said that they will restore statehood. I don't really believe everything this government says, but it's time that they do that because it hasn't really gained it. They're now giving more and more power to the LG because it's a union territory. It's easier for the government of India to control the valley with such means. But I think elections should be conducted as soon as possible and statehood should be restored as soon as possible because usually you promote from a UT to a state. Never before has there been a demotion like this where you break up a state and make a UT out of it. So sooner better than later, they should make full statehood possible.
But you will not play a proactive role in forcing the government to do that.
We are supporting it. Any move that we do, we're helping people who are doing it through the courts. We'll do it in parliament. But the government खुद ही बोल रही है हम करना चाह रहे हैं, what more do you do then? They're not saying no. They always say yes. But of course,
but you can say do it now.
Of course we will. Of course we will.
Okay. One last advice to the civil services aspirants watching you or who may watch you later. By any chance, did you ever decide or thought of writing this exam?
No, I actually didn't know. I was in college and then I did my master's and I didn't think of pursuing services at all. But I think my only advice I think I can give is that this is one of the toughest lines to choose. It's one of the most competitive exams in the world. So if people who have the grit and the strength to persevere this and get through have already made a mark by doing it, from that point onwards, they should try and do it for the society and for the country. Because once you've gotten there after qualifying, you proved yourself. Then it's best to dedicate the next 3 or 4 or 5 decades in really contributing meaningfully. And it's a wonderful, powerful platform. The services really are the bedrock of our bureaucracy. And if people who are talented, who are young, who are driven, who are motivated, are able to contribute. And I told you at the beginning, politicians have a role to play, but the bureaucrats in this country have very, very important role to play. So the young people who get through these exams, I think are at the top of the pyramid anyway. So they should do the best. So
it's worth all the trouble, all the hard work.
But I mean, like I said to you, I don't know of any of the exam that is so competitive and that's so challenging to have gone through the rigor of studying. Look at the dreams, the aspirations, and look at the sacrifices the families have made for some of these kids to get to these places to even try and sit for these exams. India anyway is very competitive, but these exams are second to none. So my best wishes to anyone who wishes to take the exam. And once you qualify, God willing, most of you will. If they do, then they should give it back as much as they can.
If I was talking to a 21-year-old Sachin Pilot, would you have considered this exam?
I was never inclined towards it.
Now when you look at it, you have interacted.
Maybe. I won't say definitive yes, but perhaps I may have thought about it. But I think it's wonderful that we have this. And the other good thing, it's one last point. When you have joined the services, it's all-India services. So people who come from, let's say, Nagaland, Mizoram, or Ladakh, or Pondicherry, or wherever else, and then they get a card that's in Bihar, or Haryana, or Punjab. And it's so wonderful to see a Malayali officer speaking to me in Punjabi when I go to Ludhiana, because he's posted as commissioner there, that gentleman. So this sort of travel of cadre officers across the nation really helps us understand and unite like nothing else. And it's this pan-India services that crisscross the nation with different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different languages, when they learn different customs, when the state adopts you, then you become part of that state, no matter where you come from. That really plays an important role because you go
That's
to
the
any
preambular objective as well, to build fraternity.
exactly. But I'm saying when it was first thought of, no one knew it would be so successful, right? Because it's difficult to understand a Kashmiri person going and working, for example, in Tamil Nadu, or a Tamil person working in Haryana. They adapt to the dialect. I've seen them really try in the first few years make an effort. In my own home state, I see so many people who are from either Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Telangana, Northeast. They come and they have important positions, and they immerse themselves into the Rajdhani culture like so beautifully that it really makes you understand what this country is all about. It's not just about 1, 2, or 3. It's about a billion and a half dreams and aspirations, and the beauty of the diversity that we bring together. So the civil services actually add a very, very important aspect to our integration as we know it, and we don't talk about it enough. We don't recognize it enough, and we take it for granted, which we should do.
I did not say this at the start because I wanted this conversation to be fair, unfiltered. But Mr. Pilot, I'm your fan. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of Unacademy Summit. I'm sorry for some uncomfortable questions.
Not at all. Listen, this was easy pickings. I've been in this job for 25 years, so this is one of the easier ones.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you.
I wanted to share some exciting news. The Unacademy UPSC subscription, whose Plus courses have produced an impressive 70 plus selections in the UPSC CSE 2023, is currently available at its lowest pricing ever, which is 23,999 rupees. And this 15-month subscription offers comprehensive coverage of GS and CSAT, along with access to test series and unlimited batches in multiple language.